1. A few years back, I lived in a student house with my girlfriend and a few other friends of mine. We tried to fill each room in the house with good friends, but we couldn't find someone to take the last room in the house, so our landlord had to find someone himself. After a few weeks of living there, our landlord told us that he had found a tenant who will be moving in. I came home from class one day to find that our new roommate had already moved in. Her name was Retta. She was short, extremely heavy-set, covered in acne, and had long black hair that went past her waist. She was super quiet and definitely didn't fit in with the rest of us at the house, but we accepted her and tried to make her feel comfortable. We were known for throwing some pretty crazy parties, and also felt fairly comfortable letting almost anyone into our house while partying, which in retrospect was not very smart on our end. We would invite Retta to come down and party with us, but she would mostly just stay in her room. It all started one weekend morning when I woke up after throwing a party the night before. My friend Zach, who also lived in the house, came down to my room. "Man, you have got to come see this." I got up and followed him to the upstairs bathroom, where he showed me that someone had defecated into his hair gel and rubbed his toothbrush, comb, and other hygienic products in feces. We were extremely grossed out, but figured this was a consequence of us being pretty lenient on who was allowed into our parties. As we were examining the bathroom, our other roommate Bill came in and told us to come check out his room. He showed us that someone had scratched extremely large X's into his computer monitor, and had also written, "I want to fuck Katie." Katie was Zach's girlfriend at the time, in big red Sharpie on his wall. We came to the conclusion that we needed to start being a lot more careful and securing the house more. A week later, I was sitting in my room when Zach came in. He told me that he had just got back from class and that he couldn't find his laptop anywhere. He thought I had taken it as a prank, but I assured him I didn't. We searched all over the house. We didn't find his laptop, but we did find some other belongings, such as Bill's Xbox hidden under the bathroom sink. We knocked on Retta's door and asked her if she had seen or heard anything suspicious. She told us that she saw an unfamiliar guy walking around the house earlier, but that she figured it was one of our friends and went back in her room. We ended up calling the police, and they did a quick sweep of the house, got a description of the unfamiliar guy from Retta, told us to lock the house up, not invite strangers, and that was that. As the weeks went by, things continued to happen in the house. My girlfriend's credit card was stolen and was used to make online purchases. Bill's door was found busted open. Blu-rays and other small items were going missing. At the same time, Bill was getting Facebook messages from somebody named Robin Holmes, who claimed to be Retta's ex-boyfriend. He was telling Bill to rape Retta in her sleep and perform other sexual activities with her, and to write him back about it. We were pretty suspicious of Retta at this point, as everybody else in the house was good friends with each other. We decided to check her room while she was out one day. We scanned her room thoroughly, but came up short. At this time, it was Christmas break, so all of us went back home to our families. When we returned to the house a few weeks later, my girlfriend spotted her credit card behind the toaster. For a second, she thought that maybe she had just misplaced it this whole time, but then realized that her card had made purchases after it went missing, and that someone had tried to put it back. We decided to search Retta's room one more time while she was still away for the holidays. While searching her room for a second time, we found out that our suspicions of Retta turned out to be accurate. Not only did we come across a bunch of poorly sketched drawings of each of us in the house, we ended up finding many of the items we claimed missing at the bottom of her laundry hamper. We also felt like idiots when it only hit us now that Retta's boyfriend was named Robin Holmes. Robbing Holmes We confronted the landlord and changed the locks while she was away. But she never came back for her belongings. We also learned at this time that she had been kicked out of school for not attending for half the year. We all moved out at the end of the year and never saw Retta again. 2. Me and two friends, who I'll refer to as Ben and Emily for the sake of the story, were on a night out in our hometown. We were young and stupid, and we had been taking quite a few e-pills, coke, weed, plus drinks, so we were pretty faded by about 1 a.m. and decided to take a cab back to Emily's house. Ben lived round the corner from Emily, about 5 minutes away, and I lived about a mile away from them too. So, we came out of the club, and seeing a taxi, we jumped straight in. We asked to be dropped at the general area rather than Emily's address so her parents wouldn't bust us for being high. The plan was to carry on the sesh in her garage, quietly. Anyway, we were all pretty messed up. Sat in the taxi, gurning, sweating, generally showing love to each other because of all the pills, and I get a brainwave. Another joint would be great right now. Hey dude, mind if I roll one in your taxi? No, came the sharp reply. We just looked at each other and started giggling, probably because of the drugs. Before I go on, I will say the driver was filthy looking. Long black greasy hair and his taxi stunk of body odor. But we were too messed up to care. Instead, why don't you guys come over to my house? I've got lots of dope in mine. Plus I'm clocking off after this ride, so we can go straight there. We all looked at each other. Bit strange. No thanks, said Emily. It's late, we have to get home. But I've got drugs, he replied, with a weird grin on his face. We soon realized we were headed for the motorway, in the opposite direction to where we were supposed to be going. Ben soon piped up. Yo, where the fuck you taking us to, man? This is not the way. Shortcut, he said. We knew this wasn't true, as we have all lived in the town all our lives and knew all routes home. I think Ben started getting scared, because he soon became aggressive. Turn the fucking car around now. The driver laughed. Okay, he said, and we were soon back on track. The rest of the journey we sat in silence, a bit creeped out by this dude. We soon pulled up to a pub that was close to where we wanted to be, and pulled into the car park that was situated at the back of the pub, away from the road. The car park was obviously empty because it was about 1:30 a.m. on what would have been a Sunday morning. He asked us again if we were sure we didn't want any free drugs. Nah man, here's a 10. Keep the change. I think the fare was about £8. We darted out of the taxi and were discussing how fucking creepy this dude was. The pub was on a long road that takes a good 10 minutes to walk down. As we got to the bottom of the road, we realized we hadn't seen the taxi pull out of the car park. We thought nothing else of it and arrived at Emily's place. Anyway, it gets to about 3 a.m.-ish, and I decided I was going to take the mile-long walk home. All my money went on booze, drugs, food, and taxis, so I had to walk. So I said bye to the others and began my trek. I was about 18 at the time and could handle myself, so I wasn't worried. Plus I've lived around here all my life, so I wasn't really bothered. I get out of Emily's estate and I see a taxi parked at the bottom of the road. A weird-looking taxi with dents all in the back bumpers, rust around the wheel arches, no wheel trims, and wonky shit-looking stickers on the doors. I also noticed it wasn't a registered taxi. No radio antennas, no registered taxi stickers next to the license plates. And no one was inside when I walked past. This is the part where you will probably think, why didn't I take the license plate number and report it? But I was starting to calm down and just wanted to get home to bed. The way I went home took me past some woods and While walking past, I noticed a strong smell of tobacco. Weird as fuck, no one was about. Maybe just the drugs, I thought. But then I heard rustling. Fuck. I was scared as fuck. I started to run, as I did hear someone. "Hey," came a shout. When I looked around, I seen the taxi driver walking out of the woods. "You left something in my cab." What the actual fuck is this guy doing? I had no mobile phone and was still about half a mile away from home. I soon realized this guy had been following me and started running after me. My heart was fucking pounding, probably from drugs mixed with running and being shit scared. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I turned a corner into a housing estate and jumped behind someone's wheelie bins in their front garden. I soon realized I was in a cul-de-sac with no way out. I heard the guy approaching. As he got closer, I could hear him laughing to himself. Fucking laughing. After about 5 minutes, but seemed like a lifetime, I heard someone, the taximan. "Hey, I'm looking for a fare dodger. Young lad, blue jeans, white t-shirt. He came this way, have you seen him?" "No, sorry," was the reply from some guy taking a midnight stroll with his dog past the estate. "Not uncommon where I live. If you see him, tell him he's done for when I get my hands on him, the little shit. He owes me 25 quid. I couldn't believe it. I paid the fare. Even let him keep the change. I stayed hid behind the bins for a good 20, maybe 30 minutes before I racked up the courage to come out and fucking sprinted the rest of the way home. When I spoke to Emily the next day to tell her what happened, she told me the police were coming round hers. Someone had broken the back locks on her doors, trying to get in, but her dad scared them away. I can't help thinking this was the taxi driver. And so does she and Ben, but we decided to keep quiet about the creep, as we didn't want to be busted for taking drugs. So, yeah, moral of the story is pay attention to what cars you get in. And don't do drugs. 3. Every Friday evening of my childhood, my mother would pick up my gran and take her to my aunt's house a few miles away for a few hours to catch up, as they didn't get to see each other at all the rest of the week. This was almost a ritual for my mother, and a well-earned break for my gran. I would always be dragged along with them, and if I didn't have a playmate with me, it would be a pretty boring few hours. Although, now my gran has passed, I'd give anything to go back and spend those hours with her once again. On this particular Friday, I'd been hanging out with my cousin who was only a few years older than me. I was around 8 and she 10. We spent the lovely summer day playing with our dolls and practicing dance routines. So when my mother suggested that my cousin join us, and gran, in a trip to our aunt's, we jumped at the opportunity. More playtime. Once we got to our aunt's, we said our quick hellos and couldn't wait to get out on the front lawn and practice our dance moves. Now, opposite our aunt's house, there was a row of about 6 shops, a convenience store, butcher's, post office, etc. On the corner of those shops was quite a large car park, which led around the back for loading whatever they sold. All of the shops were closed when we got there, so it was very quiet, but that didn't bother us. We just wanted to dance, sing, and have as much fun as we possibly could. My mother is quite a nervous person, and I was greatly taken care of under her watchful eye. There was no place I could go without her knowing exactly where I was. I'd catch a glimpse of her often at the window, checking that we were still there. As dusk approached and we were dancing and laughing away, a car drove slowly past us. A middle-aged man was driving, and in the passenger seat sat a woman with short blonde hair and glasses. They gazed at us strangely, drove over to the car park opposite, and turned off the engine. We didn't think too much of this at the time, being so young and innocent, but we did notice that they continued to stare at us. 30 or so minutes must have passed, and the noise of the car starting up again caught our attention. Gazing over, we saw the car reverse out of view behind the empty and creepy shops. I remember wondering why all the shops were closed, but I dismissed it as children often do. Another 10 or 15 minutes passed, when suddenly the car shot off the car park and pulled up a few feet from us in the street. I remember my cousin commenting that maybe they liked our dance, but I began to feel uneasy. They were talking about us, I could sense it. The man looked angry and stern. At this point, I turned around and looked to the window for the comfort of my mother, but she wasn't there. I had an awful feeling in the pit of my stomach, but my cousin just continued to dance and chat away to me. Suddenly another voice, a woman's, made me turn around sharply. The lady got out of the car and walked over to us. She asked us our names. My cousin answered her with wide-eyed innocence, but I completely froze up. The man continued to watch us from the driver's seat. The lady walked up to the open garden gate, and she was holding a piece of paper in her hands. Even at such a young age, I could clearly see that this was no map, just a scrunched-up piece of paper. "Do you girls know where so-and-so street is?" My cousin began to reply, but I just stood there shaking my head. "Could you girls maybe come with me and point it out for us, please? We will drop you both straight back as soon as we know where it is." She started gesturing with her hand for us to come closer. "Come to the car with me for a minute. I have a map, and you can take us to it. It won't take long." The man was staring without even blinking, it seemed. My cousin was saying something to her. I don't know what. "Come on, girls." She was smiling, edging through the gate towards us. I was going to turn and run, screaming at the house, when I heard my mother's voice and felt her hand tugging on the back of my t-shirt, pulling me back towards her. "What do you want?" my mum asked. The woman completely blanked her and continued looking straight at my cousin, who was a little closer to her than I was. "Come with me. I can't find the street on my own." My cousin turned around to look at my mother. "It'll only take a few minutes." The woman continued while still gesturing with her hands, calling my cousin in closer. At this point, my mother had grabbed the back of my cousin's t-shirt also, and had a firm grip on the both of us, pulling us away. "What do you want?" Mum was practically screaming. This woman gave my mum one hell of a vicious look, turned and darted back to the car, and before the door was even shut, they were speeding away down the street. Mum was shaking, and so were we. We gathered together in the house in utter disbelief. I remember Gran being utterly furious, and Mum saying that they looked like Hindley and Brady. She said she had a feeling of dread the second she looked out of the window and spotted the woman at the gate. It was lucky she did so, as Gran had berated her earlier for being too protective over us and forced her to stop watching us. She said that she had a bad feeling and couldn't help but check on us at that moment, and it's lucky she did. We contacted the police that night, but as we never got a reg number, we only had a description to go by. They didn't really seem alarmed. However, a few weeks later, a disturbing article appeared in the local paper. A man and a woman were wanted for trying to abduct young girls from a local playing field. The description they gave was spot on. It was them. I never heard anything else about it after that. I don't know if they were caught or not, but I do often wonder what they had planned for us that night. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 150. Now before I go on, I would like, of course, to say a big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. And I'll clear up one point on the last story there. The Hindley and Brady, that refers to Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, notorious serial killers of children in the UK in the 1960s. They were actually finally caught and arrested in 1965 and sentenced to prison. Myra Hindley actually passed away. I believe it was 2002 she passed away. but that lived a bit too long, in my opinion, after what they did. If you do want to know more about that case, just look up the Moors murders on Wikipedia or just Google it and you'll find plenty of information. I don't really want to go into the details of the heinousness of their crimes, but, bad people all round. Okay, so this is episode 150. I did think about doing something a little special, a little bit longer for it, but the fact is I've got that extra long video coming out tomorrow. So that tomorrow's video will be a celebration of hitting 150 on this, and also, actually, it slipped me by, but November 10th, I think it was, or thereabouts, that marked 1 year, that marked my 1 year anniversary of telling stories on YouTube. And I knew it was somewhere in November, but just completely slipped me by until I checked. So tomorrow's video will also be in celebration of that. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.